What's going on, everybody? Today, yes, today is my 1 year anniversary. It is my YouTube birthday. And, it's been an awesome time. It's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun. And so I thought a lot about what should I do to celebrate. People do giveaways and, people do events. And I said, maybe what I should do is I should do a live stream. I should do a live stream. See, the only live stream I've ever done has been hosted by someone else or hosted on a different channel. I've never hosted my own live stream. But that was before I realized today I'm going to a card show with my dad. So we're going to be spending an hour and a half each direction on the road and going to a show. I will post the video of that show soon, but we are going to leave today to do that card show. So I've actually got a long day ahead of me, but what does that mean? That means I can't do a live stream. So then I thought, well, maybe do a giveaway. Well, I did a giveaway for my 500th subscriber to celebrate that. And, it was okay, but, to me, that's not super exciting. It's just sort of like, I gave away, when I did that, I gave away a Nolan Ryan autograph. I gave away a 1964 Giants Orlando Cepeda signed card. And I gave away a Michael Jordan Sports Illustrated from when he was on the Olympic team right out of college. And it was cool, but I thought I want to do something else. So I've got two things planned for this particular video. Number one, I want to talk about my biggest takeaway. See, you know my channel. If you're watching, you probably are very familiar with. I'm really into keeping my ear to the ground when it comes to grading. And I also spend a lot of time looking at data in addition to just trying to share my enjoyment of the hobby. So what I decided to do is take you through my biggest takeaway. I feel like over the course of the year, I've learned a lot. I've studied a lot. I've investigated a lot. I've checked out a lot of data that I otherwise would never have looked at. But because of my channel, because of the content that I've continued to put out, I have acquired a bunch of information. And when I take all that information together and I squeeze it into my head, one thing really popped out. One thing was a big takeaway from where we stand in the hobby right now. So what I want to do is I want to take you through my thought process of walking you through my conclusion about where we stand right now. And I think it's interesting. And I think to me, it is a foreshadowing of where we're going and a way to really take advantage of the current environment in the hobby. And I'll be interested to hear your take on my conclusion at the end. Now, after I take you through this journey of some different mini conclusions to a grand conclusion, at the very end of the video, I also take you on a short little trip down memory lane of the last year of some of my favorite moments and specifically some of my collaborations and some of my trips for shows. So let's take a look again on my first collection of mini takeaways, which brings me to the big takeaway that I want to share. Let's take a look.
All right, first off, some of the old grades that are out there, they still hold up. Like, we think that the grading standards have gotten so much harder that all the old grades are junk, and that is not the case. Now, some of them would not get the grades that they would, from the past. Now, if we look on the left, that is an older generation. That's like generation 3, I believe. And we look on the right, and that's a new holder. And to me, they're both 4s. But I think the one on the left is a nicer card. It's got better color. It's got better centering. I think the corners are at least as good. And having a 4, it likely doesn't have a wrinkle. It's not impossible. But then we look at the price of what that sold for at almost $5,700, and we compare it to the newer label. It sold for, $4,200, $4,300, low 4s. So the buyers agreed that the better looking card is the one on the left. So, yeah, older grades sometimes hold up.
All right, I think this first one is really, really important. A lot of us believe that PSA and even SGC and the others are grading tougher now than they were. And I think for the most part, that's true. I think that is accurate. But that does not mean that every old grade, every card in an older generation holder is not the quality of the grade that it has. Just because it's maybe a 4th generation holder does not mean that that card that has a PSA 5 grade is not a 5 today. It does not mean that. Now, is it less likely that it's as nice as a current 5? Maybe. But we cannot automatically assume that just because a card has an old holder, that card is not as nice as the grades that come today. And that card is a great example of people actually looking at the quality of the card, looking at the color, looking at the centering, looking at the corners, and saying, I know it's an old holder, but I like it better than these other ones, so I'm going to pay a premium. So if you go out and you see cards and you bid on cards and you're at a show and the card's at an old holder, but it's really nice and that grade holds up, and the card is selling for less than the newer holders, snag it. Again, it goes back to buy the card, not the grade, but that's so hard to do, especially when right now we're so convinced that they're grading tougher than they used to, which I think that they are. But that doesn't mean every old grade no longer holds up. So if you see an old holder, but the card looks at least the grade that it got, snag it. And if it's at a reduced price because it's an old holder, awesome, take advantage. Let's look at the second mini conclusion.
You're going to hear a lot of contradictions in this video, and that's the whole point. When conditions are similar, people tend to pay more for the newer slabs. Now, we've got 2 Nolan Ryan rookies in 5 grades. And I think the one on the left is a little bit better centered, but the one on the right has better color. They both have pretty darn good corners, really. But overall, I think they're very similar cards. If you're a centering person, you'd want the one on the left. If color and registration is your thing, you probably want the one on the right. And when we look at it, the one on the left sold for a lot more, like $400 more or so. And I think a big part of that is because it's in the newer holder. It is not in the older generation 3-4 holder.
Right, so a lot of us do feel that PSA especially, but many of the grading companies are grading harder now than they were. Again, like I just mentioned, that does not mean that old grades don't all hold up. A lot of them do. But when people see an older holder, they're automatically a little bit kind of concerned by that. So when 2 cards look to be in pretty much equal condition, what is tending to happen is people are preferring the newer label, meaning it was graded under the newer standards according to a lot of our perception. Again, PSA says they're not grading differently, but a lot of people feel that they are. So if there are two cards that look equal and one is in the same grade as the other, but one's in an older holder and one's in a newer holder, it is very, very common that the newer holder card is going to sell for more than the older holder card, because the belief and the perception is that the newer holder is being graded under tougher and more strict guidelines. So understand that. We can take advantage of that, and we can take advantage of it both when we're buying and when we're selling, but it's something we need to be aware of.
Now, the third thing, again, you're going to hear a lot of contradictions and conflicting conclusions, but not all new grades are equal. So these are both newer graded cards, right? You see the newer label, you see the serial number, and when we look, to me, the card on the right is just superior to the one on the left. Yet they got the same grade. Like, I would much rather have the card on the right. And the card on the left sold for $2,350. The card on the right sold for almost $3,200. So same player, same card, same grade, but an extra $800 for the one on the right, because it's a clearly better card. So just because cards have the same grade doesn't mean they're equal. Here are two more new grade cards. Both are Sandy Koufax cards. Now, the one on the right's a 3, the one on the left's a 4. I'd rather have the 3 on the right.
Now, again, it would be impossible if every card with the same grade were exactly the same. That is impossible. And some people complain about each of the different companies not being super consistent. When we're looking at a PSA 10 modern card, you look at a 10 modern card that's a PSA 10 versus another 10 card that's a modern card PSA 10, and it looks very, very similar. In fact, to me, the 9s and the 10s look virtually identical in most cases. But with vintage cards, that's a different story. It's a different game, right? In vintage cards, there are high 5s and there are low 5s. There are cards that maybe were a little overgraded and cards that were a little undergraded. So if you see what you consider to be a high grade. So, for example, at a show I went to the other day, I found a card that was graded in a 5, and I'm like, that card is undergraded. That card is way better than a 5. So if I can buy it for 5 grade prices, I'm getting a great deal. But if there's a card that's a 5, but it's kind of a low 5, I would probably not pay the regular 5 comp. See, what a lot of us do is we think of comps of, well, this 5 went for that and this 5 went for that. So this 6 went for that, so this 6 should go for that. But again, not every 5 is the same and not every 6 is the same, as we just saw. So some people will pay more for the higher quality of that grade, and some people won't want to buy a certain card at a certain grade because it doesn't meet the standard of what they think that grade should present. Be aware that just because a card comped at a certain amount at the same grade does not mean that those cards are the same, and does not mean that the cards are worth the same for a lot of collectors.
More conflicting conclusions. The nicer copy of the same grade usually sells for more. Doesn't always. But if you've got 2 cards, you can expect the nicer one to sell for more. So here we have 2 Sandy Koufaxes again in PSA 3s, and to me, the one on the left is the superior card. And the one on the right has much more rounded corners. Centering's not as good. And the one on the left sold for $908. That's a really nice 3 in my eyes. And the one on the right, again, it has the same grade, but it sold for about $760. It's about an extra $250 for the one on the left. Same card, same grade, different prices.
I've had many times that I was bidding on a card, say on eBay, and I said, man, the last 2 sixes of this card went for $150. And the one that I'm looking at right now is really nice looking. It looks like a really high end of that same grade. So I bid right at the same amount of what they've been selling for, and then lo and behold, it sells for more. It sells for more because a lot of people are willing to pay up for a high-end card at that grade. I am totally happy to pay full comp or even a little over the comp if I think that the card is undergraded and I think that the card is a really high-end copy of that grade, and so are a lot of other people. So when you find a card that you think is undergraded, don't hesitate to pay up for the card because other people will.
Now, sometimes I think the lower graded card is the better card. Just because a card has a higher grade doesn't make it a better card in all cases. Now, let's look at these two. So we have another Sandy Koufax in a 3 on the right, and then a Sandy Koufax in a 5 on the left. Centering's way better on the right. Color and registration is better on the right. Corners are pretty close. The 5 might be a little bit better, but the 5 sold for over $1,500, $1,600. And that's because it's a 5. But that 3 sold for $900. So I honestly, if you didn't show me the grades, I would say the card on the right, the 3, is the better card, and it sold for $900. But the 5 on the left sold for $1,600. Wow.
We have to always remember that the grade that a card gets is just that grading company's opinion of a grader or 2 or 3. We don't always know the process exactly. Their opinion of that card on that day. So is it possible that there's a 4 out there that's better than a 5? Absolutely. Is it possible that there's a 7 grade from a grading company that is better than an 8? 100%. I see it all the time. We all see it all the time. So don't think that just because a card has the same grade or a higher grade, that it's a better card. Again, we've said it, we've heard it, it's hard to do, but we gotta be buying the card, not the grade. I've bought a lot of cards in 2 holders that don't have a crease, that have great color, that have great registration, that have good centering. Maybe the corners are just rounded. And why they got a 2, I have no idea. But I'll pay 2 prices if I can for that card that is really, really nice and is undergraded. So is it possible to buy a lower graded card for more money? You could. And would I ever do it? I might. Because just because a different card is graded higher doesn't make it a better card. It means that grading company's grader on that day deemed it better. Doesn't mean it is for everyone.
When you're buying cards online, the picture of the card is so important. If there's a bad image or scan, it's almost going to result in a lower price. So we look at these 2 cards. Now, the scan on the left is like crystal clear. And it's a nice card, right? It's a nice PSA 4 Jackie Robinson. And the one on the right, I think, is probably a nicer 4, even though it's an older label. But it's a little bit blurry. We can't quite make out the sharpness of the image and the corners and the centering. It's just kind of a bad image. And so as a result, the one on the left, which I think is probably the lesser card, sold for $675, and the one on the right that we can't really quite make out because it's just a little blurry in the scan, sold for $550.
I can't believe that there are people out there that are selling cards for hundreds of dollars and they have a blurry, bad picture in their listing. I don't understand it. It's like selling a used car and you don't wash it before you park it on a corner with a for sale sign on it. Makes no sense. I would want to make my stuff look as good as it could look before I try to sell it. So when I see bad pictures and I see blurry pictures and I see lazy pictures, I kind of assume that means something's wrong with the card that they're trying to disguise with a bad picture. So, have I ever taken, for example, the PSA serial number and done a lookup to see if there's a picture in their system of that card that's actually a decent picture? Yeah, absolutely, I've done that. When there's a card with a bad picture and it's blurry or it's hard to see or it's distant or it's at an angle, I'm leery, other people are leery. As a result, the card usually sells for less than it probably should. If there's a way you can look it up and get a different picture of that card, do it. Because it's going to sell for less than the quality of the picture because of the quality of the picture. It's going to sell for less than it probably should. Or they're hiding something. Should be aware of that and know that bad pictures sell for less. So the best case scenario for us is there's a really bad picture and nobody wants to bid on it. But you are able to look it up on PSA's website in a card lookup and you say, wow, that card's really nice. It's just a really bad picture. That is a golden opportunity.
So yes, there are a lot of people that still prefer PSA slabs regardless of how nice the card is. You could have two cards side by side and one is a better card in a higher grade with a different company, but they would go for the PSA slab. And I understand there are reasons for that. So we have a 53 mantle in a PSA 4 and a 53 mantle in an SGC 6. I think the picture's better on the SGC 6. I think the corners are better on the SGC 6. I think the centering is similar. The centering might be a little bit better on the PSA. The mantle, the 53 mantle in the PSA 4 sold for $7,600. But the SGC 6, which I think is a nicer card, sold for $5,750. So someone bought an inferior card, in my opinion, in a PSA 4 for way more than the SGC 6 superior card.
The biggest high roller room of showing off your card collection is PSA set registry. And getting your set registry higher on the list is a big time goal for a lot of people. A lot of people want to say, I'm number 3 on the 54 Tops baseball set registry on PSA. That's a big deal for a lot of people. As a result, a lot of PSA cards sell for quite a bit. They sell for quite a bit more because people want to build up their set registry ranking to move up the list. Now, if you are a believer of SGC, and I'm a believer of SGC. If you're a believer of SGC and SGC cards are not selling for as much as PSA cards, doesn't that make SGC cards a really good buy? If you know that more people are going to be bidding on PSA cards, largely because of the set registry and, maybe partly just because of, their commitment to that brand, if you're open to buying stuff in an SGC holder, you can sometimes get a really good deal. And when we look at those two cards, to me, I thought the SGC 6 was nicer than the PSA 4. Not only was it a 6 instead of a 4, I felt like, I thought the 4 was a little undergraded. I thought that was at least a 5. And I thought that was a really solid 6 from SGC. So there are times that cards sell for amounts that sometimes may not make sense simply because it's the other brand's holder. So be willing to take advantage of that. Be willing to capitalize on that if you're open to having SGC holdered cards. And if you're not, that's fine. And if you're not willing to go to PSA, I know a lot of people that will not buy PSA graded cards, and I know a lot of people that will not buy SGC graded cards. That's totally fine. But just know, if you're open to both and you see a nice card in an SGC holder, there is a chance you're going to buy that card at a discount because there are certain people that focus on PSA. So what is my big takeaway? My big takeaway after looking at all this, because all of this contradicts itself. You got things like, oh, well, grades matter. And then you're like, wait, grades don't matter. And then you're like, higher grades sell for more. And you're like, but maybe higher grades shouldn't sell for more. Everything that I just went through is contradictory. It is completely contradictory. Company doesn't matter. Company does matter. Grade doesn't matter. Grade does matter. Quality of the card is the only thing that matters. Quality of the card isn't the thing that matters most. It doesn't make sense. It's constantly contradicting itself. So what is my big takeaway? My big takeaway, when you take all of this and you squish it together into a ball and you throw it into the wall and you look at it, is I believe that grades are starting to matter less and less and less. There was a time that if you wanted an 8, you'd only buy an 8. But now I think people are buying 7s that are better than 8s. And I think there are people that are buying 8s that are worse than 7s. And in some cases, like the case of that Sandy Koufax, the 5 was way more expensive than the 3. Even though personally, I'd rather have the 3. And you guys are saying, well, you're not getting a good look at the card. You're not showing the back of the card. You're not, getting a good look at the surface of the card because it's just a picture. I get that. I do. I understand that. But I think that as we move forward, as a lot of people are accepting that old grades aren't the same as new grades, and they're accepting that, hey, maybe there's a lack of consistency from this company, or there's a lack of consistency from this company to this company. The takeaway, if we fast forward a little bit of time, the takeaway is what grades should have been all along. A suggestion, a ballpark of what a card's quality is. See, for a while, the grade mattered and has mattered too much. It is the law. It's an 8, it's better than a 7, even if it's not. But with the changes in standards, with the changes in consistency, with the multitude of companies that we have to choose from, I really believe, after doing tons of research, tons of reading, tons of examples, tons of data analysis, I really believe that where we're heading with grading is what grading should have been. A ballpark idea for the quality of the card. If I see a card has a 6, I should say, what that should tell me is, oh, so it's above a 4.5, so it doesn't have a crease in it. It doesn't have a wrinkle. Now, do I like it? Because I know it doesn't have a wrinkle. If I see a card with a 3 that looks really nice, I go, it must have a wrinkle in there somewhere. Now, good luck sometimes finding that wrinkle, but it's a ballpark. It gives us some generalizations as to the quality of the card. It doesn't mean that the lower grade isn't better than the higher grade. It just is a ballpark. So as we move forward, I genuinely believe that the number on the holder is going to continue to mean less and less and less. And instead of being the law, it's simply going to be the suggestion. This has been a fun year. I've really enjoyed it. I wanted to put together a little montage at the end. I hope you'll stick around and check it out, of some of my highlights of right when I got started to some of the people I've met and collaborated with along the way, to some of the adventures and card shows that I've gone with my dad to attend and had a great time with. It's not long, it's short. Take a look. It's been an awesome year. I look forward to this next one. Hey, and by the way, about all that stuff I just talked about down below, tell me what you think. Blown away. It has been just under 4 weeks since I launched the first video on my YouTube channel, and I've got 176 subscribers. That's crazy to me. I can't even believe it. If we look, you can see 176 subscribers. I mean, this video I posted, I don't know, just a few, like 3 or 4 hours ago, and it's already got 118 views. 118 people took the time to watch what I made. I'm just blown away. I really, every time I get one of those notifications that another person subscribed, I'm like, that's so cool that somebody wants to watch more of what I made. Like, it's crazy. So again, it's been like something like 26 days or something since I posted the first one, and
and we got Greg from Midlife Cards. Thank you guys so much for appearing tonight and for the first ever vintage baseball card trivia night.
Episode 8. And with me today is Greg from Midlife Sports Cards. How you doing, Greg?
Good, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. It's kind of weird. Greg's the first guest that I've had the most minimal contact with before having a conversation with. So that could actually be a good thing, or it could be a bad thing. So
He's a guy that I've watched from afar for a little while and really respect how he hobbies and how he looks at vintage. And he's a vintage guy like myself, so this will be an easy conversation. And we found out we have a lot in common. We like each other. And so let me bring him on right now. Greg from Midlife Cards on YouTube. How you doing, buddy? Welcome to the show.
Good, thanks for having me. Thanks for the kind words. And, I think similarly, I've been watching you for quite a while from afar, and really admire a lot of the things that you do and produce. And so I'm really excited.
All right, what is going on, everybody? So, super excited to be here today. If you don't know me, I am Greg. My channel is Midlife Sports Cards, and I've got 2 really great people with me today. I've got Orlando from A Collector's Dream and Ryan from Breakout Cards. How you doing, guys?
Great.
So Ryan is stuck in Chantilly at the card show. He had some flight travel issues, so he is actually at the show right now. So maybe if you want to buy something, you can send Ryan a message.
Jake. And next up, we got Greg. Greg, where's your mask?
I don't. This is the mask.
Such a good idea that I thought let me piggyback on that. Greg, welcome to the show. I wasn't trying to steal your idea, I promise. But
No, it's cool. Thanks for having me, Mike.
yeah, it's good to be.
The Sacramento Wyndham Card Show, a lot of people have their local card shows, but I've got a really good local card show. I look forward to it every year. It's about once a quarter. It's about 4 or 5 times a year. Excited for a card show today. It's been a minute since there's been a card show around here, so I am excited to go over and pick my dad up. We're gonna head up to Auburn, California together to head into this Rockland card show. Second time this group has put on a show. Last one was great, so I have really high hopes. This is Friday, Saturday, Sunday this time. And this
Right,
is
so the end of April, and my dad and I headed to the Santa Clara card show, and it is right in the shadows of Levi's Stadium. and there were tons of autograph signers today.
There is a show about an hour from me up in Auburn, California, toward Lake Tahoe. And then there's another one in the Bay Area, the opposite direction. That one's about an hour 45 away. I'd really like to go to both because we don't have shows in this area very often. The fact that they're on the same day is not ideal, but I'm going to try to hit both of them. We'll see what happens with the traffic and things with this storm. But that is my plan.
Last time I was at this show, I think it was December. It was an awesome show. So much cool vintage stuff. Great organization, great show. Really excited for this one. It's a 2-day show. I'm here just for Saturday though. You can see my dad there in the background. There he is. Hey, Dad. And so super excited for this show. And let's see what we got inside.